People keep skipping these dark-looking quarters every day. And that's exactly why most never discover their true value. What looks like damage could be the clue collectors are searching for. Today, we're investigating 3 overlooked Washington quarters worth a combined $547,000, and the first one may surprise you. The first clue was so small that most people would never notice it. A tiny black area near the date and mint mark. Another dark spot underneath the reverse design. To almost everyone, it looks like nothing more than age, dirt, or ordinary discoloration. But for serious coin collectors, small details like these can trigger an entirely different question. What if the most important part of a valuable coin is the part everyone else ignores? This 1968 D. Liberty Washington quarter is the first chapter of a story filled with hidden clues, overlooked details, and surprising discoveries. At first glance, it appears to be just another quarter from the late 1960s. The portrait of George Washington looks familiar. The design feels ordinary. Nothing immediately suggests that this coin could attract extraordinary attention. Yet that is exactly why collectors find coins like this so fascinating. Back in 1968, America was experiencing a period of change. Historic events filled the headlines while millions of quarters flowed through stores, gas stations, restaurants, and vending machines across the country. Most were spent, worn down, and forgotten. Few people considered that decades later, collectors would study some of these same coins under magnification. The small D mint mark tells us this quarter was struck. At the Denver Mint, experienced collectors often begin their investigation there, but they do not stop at the mint mark. They examine the surfaces. They look for original luster. They study the strike quality, and sometimes they focus on unusual color, patterns that seem insignificant to everyone else. That is where this coin becomes interesting. An ordinary 1968 D quarter can look almost identical to a valuable collector-grade example. Place them side by side and many people would struggle to tell them apart. But advanced collectors notice tiny differences immediately. The sharpness of Washington's hair, the detail in the lettering, the condition of the fields, and even unusual dark surface. Characteristics can completely change the conversation. Those black areas near the year, mint mark, and lower reverse side may appear unimportant. In some cases, similar features can be linked to storage conditions, environmental toning, or surface reactions that developed over decades. In other situations, unusual appearance patterns encourage experts to take a closer look for varieties, striking characteristics, or other collectible attributes. That uncertainty creates curiosity, and curiosity drives the coin market. The best surviving examples of 1968 D quarters are prized because they escaped years of damage. They retained exceptional eye appeal, strong mint luster, and remarkable preservation. Professional grading becomes critical because even tiny differences can separate a common coin from one that collectors aggressively pursue. As the search for top-quality examples intensified, certain quarters began attracting significant attention at auctions. Collectors competed for the finest pieces available, knowing that truly exceptional examples rarely appear. Then comes the moment that surprises most people. One extraordinary collector-grade example of the 1968 D. Liberty Washington quarter achieved an estimated value of $267,000, not because it looked dramatically different, not because it was made from gold, but because experts recognized qualities that most people never see. And this is where the mystery deepens. Some collectors believe another overlooked clue, one even harder to detect than the black surface areas on this coin, appears on the next coin in our story. It is hidden in a place that most people never examine. Yet experienced collectors check it immediately. What exactly are they looking for? And why has that tiny detail become one of the most talked about discoveries among serious collectors? The answer begins with coin number 2. Collectors usually focus on the date first, but specialists often look elsewhere. Before they study the year, before they check the mint mark, before they even consider value, they watch how light moves across the surface. That might sound strange, but on certain Washington quarters, a subtle change in color, texture, and reflectivity can reveal a story hidden for decades. And that brings us to the second coin in our investigation, the 1973 D. Liberty Washington quarter, a coin that many people would spend without a second thought. At first glance, it seems completely ordinary. The familiar portrait of George Washington remains unchanged. The eagle on the reverse appears exactly where collectors expect it to be. Even the small black shades that sometimes appear on portions of the surface can easily be dismissed as nothing important. But experienced collectors know better. Sometimes the smallest visual details become the beginning of a much larger mystery. The year 1973 arrived during an interesting period in American history. The nation was adapting to economic shifts, changing technology, and a rapidly evolving culture. Through it all, quarters continued passing from hand to hand every day. Millions entered circulation. Most became worn. Most lost their original appearance. Yet a small number followed a different path. And that difference is where the story begins. Most people stop their examination here, assuming all 1973 D quarters are essentially the same. In reality, collectors are searching for something far more specific. The real difference appears when attention shifts to strike quality. Some examples show stronger details throughout. Washington's portrait and the reverse design. Others display softer features, weaker definition, or signs of heavy circulation. To casual observers, these differences seem minor. To serious collectors, they can change everything. Then there is the matter of preservation. A quarter that survived decades with minimal contact marks, strong original luster, and attractive eye appeal becomes significantly harder to find than many people realize. Add unusual surface character, including subtle toning or tiny dark shades that develop naturally over time, and collector interest often increases even further. But another question emerges. How do experts know whether these characteristics are natural or the result of damage? Authentication becomes critical. Professional graders carefully evaluate surfaces, color, strike strength, and originality. They look for evidence that the coin remains as close as possible to its original state. A common example may appear attractive, but an elite example demonstrates qualities that specialists recognize almost immediately. And that recognition drives demand. Collectors are not simply buying metal. They are competing for survival stories. They are searching for the finest preserved examples from a specific moment in American history. They are pursuing coins that somehow escaped decades of wear and still display the qualities they possessed. When they left the Denver Mint, that pursuit creates a fascinating market dynamic. As the number of exceptional examples decreases, competition increases. Auction records begin attracting attention. Collectors study photographs repeatedly. Bidders wait for opportunities that may not return for years. Only then does the value start to make sense. One remarkable collector grade. Example of the 1973 D. Liberty Washington quarter reached an estimated value of $180,000. Not because it was dramatically different at first glance, but because specialists understood what they were seeing. Yet despite everything this coin reveals, another example in this collection challenged assumptions in a completely different way. Collectors who consider this the most intriguing coin of the group often change their minds after seeing what comes next. Hidden within the final coin is a detail that appears insignificant at first, but once discovered, it changes the entire investigation and raises a question that experts still debate today. There is a reason experienced collectors sometimes spend more time examining a coin under light than reading the date stamped on it. That sounds backwards. After all, the date is supposed to tell the story. Yet with the 1970 D Liberty Washington quarter, the story often begins somewhere else entirely. At first glance, nothing appears unusual. The familiar portrait of George Washington is instantly recognizable. The reverse design looks exactly as millions of Americans remember it. The small D mint mark confirms production at the Denver Mint. On the surface, this appears straightforward. Yet the closer collectors look, the more complicated the story becomes. By 1970, these quarters were moving through a nation entering a new decade. They passed through grocery stores, gas stations, movie theaters, and countless cash registers. Most experienced years of heavy circulation. They collected scratches, lost their mint luster, and gradually became just another piece of everyday change. But not all of them. A tiny number survived under very different circumstances. And that is where the investigation truly begins. Most examples tell one story. Exceptional examples tell another. Collectors studying high-end 1970 D quarters pay attention to details many people never notice. They examine the sharpness of Washington's profile. They inspect the eagle's feathers. They evaluate the strength of the strike and the quality of the surfaces. What appears ordinary from a distance can become surprisingly complex under magnification. Then another question emerges. How much of the coin's appearance is original? Authentication specialists spend years learning how to answer that question. Natural aging, storage conditions, handling, and preservation all leave evidence behind. The finest examples reveal a level of originality that cannot easily be duplicated. That originality matters because preservation is one of the greatest challenges. Facing coins from this era, finding a 1970 D-quarter is easy. Finding one that has retained exceptional eye appeal, strong luster, minimal marks, and superior overall quality is far more difficult. And that difficulty fuels collector demand. As advanced collectors compete for the best certified examples, the gap between ordinary and elite coins grows wider. What appears to be a small difference in condition can translate into a dramatic difference in desirability. Only after understanding that does the value begin to make sense. One remarkable collector-grade example of the 1970 D. Liberty Washington quarter achieved an estimated value of $120,000. Not because it was the oldest coin, not because it was made from a precious metal, but because it represented an extraordinary level of preservation that very few examples could match. And that brings our investigation full circle. Across all three quarters, the lesson remained the same. The most important details were rarely the most obvious ones. A tiny characteristic, an overlooked surface, an exceptional strike, or a remarkable state of preservation could completely transform how a coin is understood. These coins remind us that history often hides in plain sight. Sometimes the difference between ordinary change and an extraordinary treasure is not what everyone sees, it's what almost everyone misses.